My intent in these 15 minutes or so is to open up for you Torah, all of Jewish literary tradition, in such a way that you can access it readily. I'm going to be describing an operating system that dates back as much as 3,200 years, and that would be Torah Operating System 1.0. And then about 2,000 years ago, we had Torah Operating System 2.0. And right now, we are experiencing a shift to Operating System 3.0. But just as in any technical evolution, if you don't have the first two plateaus, you can't do the third one. So there isn't any operating system that begins with 3.0. 3.0 is built on 2.0, 2.0 is built on 1.0, and so forth. This operating system that I want to share with you is the foundation for the operating system for Western civilization. This is an extraordinary statement. That Western civilization as we know it is built first upon Torah, which is the Torah, would be 1.0. And then, as you'll see, the evolution of that. It's how our justice system is based. Everything, the foundation of Western civilization comes out of this tiny, tiny percentage of the Jewish world, which represents a tiny percentage of the world population. And then I'm going to share with you two words which are a key that open it up for you. Everybody who is sitting around these tables is a progressive person. Progressive person. You are not fundamentalist. If you're a fundamentalist, there would be no difficulty. The system is available to you. The difficulty is how is it that progressive Jews now can access this system and become players? And I will share with you the two words which are an absolute key. You will recognize them instantly. And if you make use of this key, it will open up this operating system so you can sit at the table. You don't need a beard, you don't need to be a guy, you don't need payas. You can be just who you are, sit at the table, and participate in this revolution, this discussion that is going on at this very moment, and be utterly authentic as you do it. Okay, we begin with Operating System 1.0. Operating System 1.0 is the Torah. Notice the emphasis on the definite article. The Torah is right here. That's it. That's the Torah. Now, I want to share with you this entire board is Jewish literary tradition. This entire board. This is the year 2012 around the edge. And this is, let's say, 3,000 years ago, give or take a few hundred years. So this is the Torah. This is the scroll which we roll up and we put into the ark. We hide it away in the ark. We bring her out only for special occasions. We bring her out for Shabbat. We bring her out for holy days. And since as progressive Jews, those are the only times you ever come to shul, temple, you begin to think that the Torah, which is indeed the center of Jewish tradition, may be all there is to it. But the Torah was essentially closed 2,000 years ago, give or take a couple hundred years. This is Operating System 1.0. It describes how we functioned in the time of the priests. The priests offered animal sacrifice, agrarian sacrifice, to God as king in the temple in Jerusalem. This describes how to do it. About 2,000 years ago, that stopped. Now, everything on this table here is Torah. And that's the first most important thing to learn. When we talk about the Torah, we're talking only about this. When we're talking about Torah, we're talking about this. And you can see that this is far more than just this. So to the Torah were added the volumes of the prophets and the volumes of the writings. And Hebrew prophets is Nevi'im, and Hebrew writings is Ketuvim. So TNCH, Tanakh, becomes the Hebrew word, the abbreviation of Torah, prophets, and writings. And that's the Old Testament. We don't call it the Old Testament, of course, because figure it out. Okay. But it's in every Motel 6. You'll find it there. along with other volumes as well. Now, this is done 2,000 years ago. It's complete. You cannot add to it. You cannot take away from it. Now, according to this board, anybody who is operating on this board, anywhere on this board, this is the Word of God. Torah is the Word of God. This is what Moses received at Sinai. I'm standing here right underneath Sinai. And every single word of it is holy. Every single letter, every jot, every tittle of it is absolutely holy. It is the Word of God. Now that makes it difficult for us, because many of us are educated, myself included, to understand that the Torah was made up of various documents. The Elohistic document, the Yahwistic document, the priestly document, the Deuteronomistic document. Let me tell you, that doesn't fit on this board anywhere. This is the Word of God. This is how it came down to Moses at Sinai 3,200 years ago. Now, already that puts us at a distance from it and won't permit us to engage on this board. But I promise you, I will give you 2 words that will open it up for you, and then you can sit right here with all the rabbis and all the scholars, current and past. Now, here is one of the great secrets that's held and kept away and hidden from progressive Jews. When Moses was at Sinai, and I say this as a matter of absolute religious fact, okay? When Moses was at Sinai, Moses received not 1 Torah, but 2 Torahs. Not 1 Torah, but 2 Torahs. The first Torah was put down in writing and was available to the entire world. The second Torah was passed down orally, from Moses to Joshua, Joshua to the judges to the prophets. And then the prophets on to the people of the Great Assembly and the early rabbis and the later rabbis. This was passed down in 6 orders. An order is something that is presented in a way that you can memorize it. And it was an oral Torah, it was passed down. It has come to be known to us as the Mishnah. I put it under here. And this too is the Word of God. Every single word of it is the Word of God, given exactly as we have it here to Moses at Sinai. Now when you read it, it flies in the face of all reason that this came to Moses, 1,200 years before it was finally set down. It was written down in the year 212 by Judah HaNasi, so it shouldn't be forgotten. And then there were additional texts and things which were written down. But this is the written tradition, this is the oral tradition, and I can't emphasize too much. Every word is the Word of God as it comes from Sinai. You're arguing holy text when you do this. Now, one of the questions is, how do we get from here out to here? How do we get from here, which is 2,000 years ago, out to here? Now, for the written law, there are 2 ways to do it. One is to write a commentary. And every century has a commentator who will work on this and begin to bring it farther and farther out. And for religious commentary, every commentator understands that every word of this is the Word of God. And so every comment that I write on it now has to be done with that awareness. And I bring it out and out and out. So 1,000 years ago you have Rashi. And then you have Ibn Ezra, you have Nachmanides. And you have Beno Yaakov. Now some of these names you may not know and some of them you may not. But if you go to a religious library where they have volumes and volumes of Torah, you will find commentaries by the century as they come out. The other way of bringing material out from Tanakh out to the present time is called Midrash. Now Midrash, unlike commentary is done to an entire piece of text, the entire Torah, the entire prophets, a book of Torah, a book of prophets. To write a commentary requires an extraordinary amount of knowledge, because the person who is writing out here has to be a master not only of Torah, but all of these commentaries. Because that person now is arguing with each of these people as you go back through time. And when you read one of these commentaries, it's as if all the others are sitting at the table with you, because this commentator is referring to each of them and arguing with them. Midrash is different. Midrash can be written in any place at any time. It's like little stars here and there. And you could have collections of Midrash from any age, and they're put into volumes. And Midrash continue to be written right at this moment. Likely you know a lot of Midrash, even if you've never studied Midrash, because you remember it from your religious school or something like that. I remember, as a child, I heard a story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. No, it was Abraham. His father was an idol retailer, and the idol retailer went away, and Abraham broke all the idols except the biggest one, and the father came back and said, "Who did all that?" And Abraham said, "He did," pointing to the hammer in the hands of the biggest idol. And the father said, "How can he do it? He's only wood and stone." And Abraham said, "Aha!" You remember that story? Right. That's not in the Bible. It's not in the Torah. That's Midrash. And Midrash continues to be written to this day. Now, how do you take Mishnah? Well, as soon as the Mishnah was put down in writing, they began to argue it. And they argued it for several centuries. First in Babylon and then in Palestine. And together this is called Talmud. Now here's another secret that is often kept from progressive Jews. Everything you know that is Jewish, that's hyperbole, but within a few percentage points. Everything that you know that is Jewish, everything that you do that is Jewish, comes from the Talmud, not from the Torah. That's as strongly as I can say it. If you want to get married, you want to get buried, you want to grieve. If you want to celebrate a holiday, if you want to do Shabbos, if you want to know about Hanukkah, if you want to know about Bar Mitzvah, if you want to know about blessings, if you want to know about prayer, it isn't here. It's here. 95% of it, at least, is here. Now consider that for a moment, and the way in which progressive Jews have been educated. How much of your education has been here? How much of it has been here? The difficulty, of course, is to be here, you got to have a beard and payas, and you have to be a guy, and you have to sit at long tables. Except I'm going to give you 2 words that will open it up for you, that will allow you to sit at that table. Now, how do you get from here out to here? Well, one way, of course, is commentaries. And out here again is Rashi, about 1,000 years ago. And if it weren't for Rashi's commentary, this stuff would be incomprehensible. And then a generation or so afterwards, you have Rashi's grandchildren who will argue with him on the same page. Let me show you what a page looks like. This is Talmud. And you can see that this page is almost looking like what I have on the flip chart here. This here is the Talmud itself, and this is Rashi's argument, and this is his grandchildren arguing with Rashi. And down at the bottom you have additional commentaries and additional arguments. And these are pages of Talmud. So you have the oldest in the middle, and then around the table you come out to the present day. Another way is you sift through all of this, and you find what is pertinent and what behavior is demanded from these arguments. These arguments have, in one way, laws, and the other way they have tales in here. The tales are phenomenal. But they're hidden from us because they're mostly Talmud and not Torah, prophets, and writings. You create codes of law. And ultimately, Maimonides wrote a code of law back in the 13th century. It wasn't the right time to have a code of law. It was great. It was called the Mishnah Torah. It wasn't until the 16th century that we had a code of law that was ultimately accepted as the code, and that was the Shulchan Aruch. And I'll put that one down here. This is the 16th century. And still you have to get from the 16th century out to the 20th century. So to the Shulchan Aruch you have commentaries and layers of commentaries to the Shulchan Aruch, and to the earlier codes of law as well. And then also Chidushim, you have people who study Talmud and they come up with volumes of new findings concerning Talmud. And then you have something called responsa. Responsa in some way down here are like midrash up here. Responsa means responses, answers to questions. So you have a question. Down below we see we have computers and copy machines. What is the halacha concerning computers and copy machines? We don't know that from the 16th century code of law. So somebody will ask the sage of the age, and the sage of the age will write a response, and there'll be other responses, and ultimately the responses will be accepted as law, and there'll be collections of responsa, and this goes out to this very day. So, I've done everything. This is operating system 2.0. We began operating with system 2.0 2,000 years ago. This has great promise for the world. Consider it's regressive religion that is causing, huge amounts of difficulties right now in the world. Religions that haven't gone from one operating system to another. The Jewish people have shown that it can be done. The fact that we have an example that can be done is wonderfully promising. The world needs to know that it can be done. The other thing is we have operating 3.0 beginning to come out. I'll tell you a story. Rabbi Akiva, in the Academy of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived in the 2nd century of this era. Around the time that Rabbi Akiva was doing his work, Moshe, of course, was up in the yeshiva on high. And Moshe was looking over the shoulder of God, who was putting little decorations on tops of the letters of the Torah scroll. And Moses asked God, what are these for? He said, down there, there's an academy where there's a guy teaching mountains of law in each of these letters. So Moses says, may I see? And he turns around, he's in the Academy of Rabbi Akiva, and he's listening, and he doesn't understand a word. So he nudges the guy next to him, and the guy next to him says, you don't know what he's talking about? This is the Torah that Moses got at Sinai. He says, oh, wow. Goes back up to the yeshiva on high, and God says, how'd you like it? And he says, I didn't understand the word. But he says, it was the Torah that you gave me. He says, should I wipe him out? Is this okay? He says, this is wonderful, because it means my Torah is eternal. It goes on forever and ever. Now, here's this part that you haven't heard. Rabbi Akiva is up in the Academy on high. And the Holy One is putting the entire Talmud into the internet. And Akiva is saying, why are you doing that? He says, because in the future there are going to be people sitting around tables like these who are going to be creating mountains of new tradition out of this. He says, may I see? And Rabbi Akiva comes down to this room, sitting around these tables, overhearing what we're talking about at the moment. And he will go back, of course, and say, I didn't understand a word. But everything will be fine with him because it means Torah is eternal. So 3.0 is this. When Moses stood at Sinai, Moses received 3 Torahs. One he received here, one he received here, and the third one is coming alive now on the internet. I'm quite serious about this. That Torah is coming alive now. It's an egalitarian, progressive Torah for the time that we don't relate to God as king so much, or as parent so much, but as partner. And that's happening now. Now I'll give you the 2 words that allow you to participate in this. You don't accept likely this as the word of God, every word of it. You don't accept this likely as the word of God, as every word of it. But when you are operating on this playing field, you will act as if, those are the 2 words, as if it is the word of God. Surrender all reason, play by the rules, act as if it's the word of God. Nobody cares whether you really believe it or not. All they want to know is that you're playing by the rules. And then you can sit and argue with anybody on this board. So when you go to the yeshiva, you don't need a beard. When you come around these tables, you don't need a yarmulke. But you do need a willing to suspend disbelief and play as if. I mean, you do it on a football field. If you play football, those rules are sillier than these. But it's as if that is the universe that you are playing on. So if you play by the rules as if this is the word of God, all of this opens up to you. You can learn Talmud, 2.0, and you can participate in the development of 3.0. One last word. The purpose of Torah in this world is to provide proof text to show that Talmud is correct. The purpose of Talmud in our world is to provide proof texts to show that we too are tied into Jewish tradition. Without Talmud, you can't go to 3.0. Use the words as if, and we can get there. Thank you very much.